Sugar is one of the most addicting substances like on the planet. If this came out now, like cocaine did back in the 70s or the 60s or whenever all those movies were made about it, sugar has the same effect on your brain that like a drug would. So it is addicted, which is why the food industry puts it into so many items that never happened before. Like think about when, I don't know how old you are, I know how old I am, but even the foods that I ate as a child, I don't want my daughter having because they are genuinely not the same foods. Does that make sense? Like, because there's so much more added into it. The other part is that your blood sugar spikes when you have any kind of sugar, carb, white bread, pasta, things like that. So your blood sugar should be going like this. But if you think about it, if you have a meal that's full of sugars or like a Thanksgiving kind of meal, right? Like a bigger, like one of those juicy, carb-filled, starchy kind of meals, your blood sugar is going to spike. And then what happens is we have that crash. And then what happens is we need another spike. And then we have another crash. And then we have another spike. And then we have another crash. And the way to bring your blood sugar back up is by having something, again, that has a bit of sugar in it. But people aren't reaching for an orange or an apple. What are people reaching for is an afternoon snack, a couple of candies on the desk, or a coffee and a pastry, right? So people might start their mornings out and then have that spike and then have that crash and have that spike and have that crash, which is what's causing them to want more food and to be more hungry when realistically, it's just a matter of balancing your blood sugar. Does that make sense? There's a difference between the processed sugars and fruit. Okay, let me be clear. Insulin is like fructose will, and you can also look at different fruits and look at the glycemic index, I think it's called, on them, and see what ones have a higher spike than others. Like for example, I think cantaloupe has a pretty low one, whereas a banana would have a pretty high one. Does that make sense? So you can also look at this with people that have diabetes that actually really do have to track and see what it is that they're eating and when. That will, you can Google things like that to see what kinds there are. But when it comes to other sugars and when it comes to the typical American, Swedish, any kind of diet, what do we normally do is people wake up, they have their coffee, they have a bagel or a bread or a pancake or an Eggo or a banana or oatmeal or something on the way, right? And what's happening is immediately they're starting their bodies up by putting themselves on a high. And then they drive to work and they get to work or they get wherever they're going. And then maybe an hour or two later, they have a crash. And then it's, hey, do you want to go for a coffee break? Yeah, sure. What do people put in their coffee? Milk, cream, sugar. Even if it's not anything in there, caffeine registers in your body the same as sugar does. Will give you a high. And then it brings them down. And that's why people snack and nibble all day, is they're trying to balance their blood sugar. Whereas if you're having a nice sustained diet, and it can be fruits, like I'm not saying not to put fruits in there at all. I love fruits. We have fruits every day in our house. Every day, like we go through a ton. But when you have more of a sustained diet, then it does help to balance out the appetite. There comes a point in the Wild Fit program where we have had people say, like, I just don't want to eat anymore. Like I just don't have any I don't have any cravings. I don't want to eat food. Like I just want to drink Alka-Geyser, or do I have to eat this much? And it's not that it's just emotionally they don't need it anymore because sugar has been removed. Do you know what I'm saying? So those dips are there, they're more sustained, and it's a learning process as to what their body physically needs versus what we believe it needs.